Heaven deliberately slowed you down, not because you weren't ready, not because you lacked the talent, the hunger, the capacity to carry what you were asking for. Heaven slowed you down because what is being built through your life is so significant, so structurally complex, so weight-bearing in its purpose, that rushing the foundation would have destroyed everything the building was meant to hold. You didn't know that. You couldn't have known that. All you could see was everyone else moving, arriving, receiving, while you stood in what felt like the same place, working the same ground, wondering what was wrong with you that the harvest everyone else seemed to be walking into hadn't reached your field yet. And the question you've never been able to fully silence, the one that finds you in weak moments, in the quiet, in the gap between your faith and your reality, is this: why not me? Why not yet? Why is it taking this long? What you are about to hear is going to answer that question in a way that permanently changes how you see every year you've been waiting. Let's start with what you've been watching. You've been watching people your age, people you went to school with, people who started around the same time you did, people who, if you're being honest, you know you are more gifted than step into rooms you haven't been invited into yet. You've watched their announcements, their milestones, their visible momentum. And you've done the thing that chosen ones do in those moments. You've taken the feeling back inside yourself, processed it alone, told no one the full depth of it, and quietly wondered whether the sense of destiny you've carried your entire life was something you invented to survive the gap between who you are and what has materialized. You felt it but could never put it into words. The comparison doesn't just sting. It cuts at something deeper than ambition. It cuts at identity. Because the delay isn't just about results, it's about the question underneath the results. The question that says, if I was really chosen, wouldn't it look different by now? That question is the most dangerous thing you carry. More dangerous than any external obstacle, more erosive than any visible setback. Because it takes the very thing that was designed to sustain you, your sense of calling, your internal knowing, your deep and unshakable sense that your life was built for something, and turns it into evidence against you. But here is what the comparison was never showing you. Here is what the timeline of other people's lives was never equipped to reveal. You were not designed for early success. And that is not a consolation. That is a revelation. There are two categories of success that operate in the world, and almost no one teaches the difference between them. The first category arrives early, peaks visibly, and is built on talent and timing and circumstance. It is real. It is not illegitimate. But it is calibrated for a specific kind of assignment. Assignments that are wide in reach but limited in depth. Assignments that require momentum more than foundation. Assignments that the world can support because the world already has the infrastructure for them. The second category is different in its architecture entirely. It arrives later, sometimes much later than every external marker of fairness would suggest, because it is not being built by visible hands. It is being built by a process that operates below the surface, in the unseen dimension of preparation, in the slow and painstaking construction of a foundation that can hold something the world has never held before. This second category, the late arrival, the slow build, the success that looks delayed from the outside, but is actually being precision engineered from somewhere beyond ordinary sight. This is the category your life belongs to. You sense this before anyone told you. That's why you're still here. That's why, despite everything the comparison has cost you emotionally, despite every moment of doubt and exhaustion and quiet grief over the timeline you expected and didn't receive, you haven't stopped. You haven't walked away from the sense of purpose that lives at the center of you. You haven't been able to make yourself believe, fully and finally, that you were wrong about what your life was for. That inability to give up, that is not stubbornness. That is heaven holding you in place until the construction is complete. Here is what was actually happening during the years that felt like delay. While the people you were comparing yourself to were receiving their early chapters, your preparation was entering a phase of depth that their assignments did not require. Not because your assignment is more important in a hierarchical sense, but because your assignment is more complex in its structural demands. Think about the difference between a building that rises quickly and a building that is meant to stand for generations. The quickly rising building can begin construction almost immediately. The groundwork is manageable. The timeline is predictable. The result is visible within a reasonable frame of expectation. But the building meant to stand for generations requires something entirely different before the first wall goes up. It requires a foundation that goes down further than anyone watching from the street can see. It requires excavation. It requires testing the soil. It requires, sometimes, going back and rerouting the foundation when the original plan reveals a weakness. It requires patience from every person involved in the build, a patience that is invisible from the outside and easily misread as inactivity. From the street, both construction sites look the same during foundation work. Nothing appears to be happening. But underground, in the unseen dimension, one of them is developing a capacity that the other will never possess. You are the second building. This explains something that never made sense: why the same effort that produced visible results for others produced only invisible results for you, for season after season. It wasn't that your effort was insufficient. It wasn't that your faith was inadequate. It wasn't that you were doing something wrong that the people ahead of you were doing right. It was that your effort was going underground. Your faith was building something beneath the surface. Your work was not wasted, it was foundational. And foundational work, by definition, cannot be seen until the building rises. Only a chosen one understands this feeling, the feeling of working in the dark, the feeling of pouring yourself into something that has not yet produced the external evidence you need to prove to yourself and to the world that you weren't wrong. The feeling of maintaining your belief in what you carry when nothing around you is confirming that belief in the ways you were taught to expect. Most people cannot sustain that feeling for long. Most people, when the evidence doesn't arrive within an acceptable window of time, make the only rational decision available to them. They revise their expectations downward. They tell themselves a smaller story. They negotiate with reality and arrive at a version of their life that is more comfortable, more legible, more easily defended at a dinner table when someone asks how things are going. And there is no judgment in that. For most people, that revision is the appropriate and even wise response to a timeline that isn't delivering. But you haven't been able to do it. You have tried. You know you have. You've had moments of attempted surrender, moments where you told yourself to just accept where you are, to release the expectation of something larger, to make peace with the ordinary. And every time, something in you refused. something that operates below the thinking mind, below the fear, below the exhaustion of a season that has gone longer than you planned. Something in you keeps holding the original vision, keeps believing the original calling, keeps returning to the quiet knowing that your life was built for something that has not yet fully arrived. That something is not delusion. It is not ego. It is not the inability to accept reality. That something is the voice of heaven refusing to let you settle for a life smaller than your assignment. Let's go to the middle of the story, the place where everything changes. Here is the major revelation, the one that reframes not just the delay, but every painful moment within it. The comparison you have been making was never accurate, not because the other people's success isn't real, but because you were never in the same race. You have been measuring your progress against a timeline that was not designed for your destination. You have been reading the map of someone else's journey and trying to locate yourself on it, growing increasingly confused and discouraged because nothing on their map corresponds to the terrain you are moving through. You are not on their map. You were never on their map. Your destination is not their destination, not even close. And a destination that is different in kind, not just in degree, not just in scale, but in the actual nature of what it is and what it requires, cannot be reached by the same road, on the same timeline, through the same sequence of developments. The people you've been watching were on their road. You have been on yours. And the road to where you are going passes through terrain that their roads never touched, terrain that looked, from the outside, like delay, like stagnation, like falling behind, but was actually the most essential geography of your entire journey. Everything suddenly makes sense. Because the things that happened to you during the delay, the closed doors, the failed plans, the seasons of invisibility, the periods where your growth was happening entirely inside you with no external confirmation, those were not detours from your path. They were the path, the specific, irreplaceable, precision-designed path that leads to the specific destination your life was built for. No one else's road could have taken you there. Not because their road is inferior, but because their road was built for their destination, and your destination requires a road that almost no one else will ever travel. Think about what the delay developed in you that early success would have destroyed. Early success produces a particular kind of confidence, visible, energetic, externally reinforced. It is a real and valuable thing, but it has a shadow side that is rarely discussed. It makes you dependent on external confirmation. When the wins arrive consistently and quickly, you develop a relationship with success where your inner state is calibrated by outer results. You feel good when things are going well. You feel uncertain when they aren't. Your sense of identity and calling becomes tethered, even subtly, to the evidence of progress that others can see. What the long season of hidden preparation produces in a chosen one is something entirely different. It produces an inner confidence that is not dependent on external confirmation, because for years, it had no external confirmation to depend on. It produces a faith that has been tested past the point where most people's faith holds, and emerged still intact. It produces a relationship with purpose that is rooted so deeply in your internal knowing that it cannot be shaken by the instability of circumstances, the silence of seasons, or the noise of comparison. This is what others could not understand. The strength that is being built in you during this season is not the strength that early success builds. It is the strength that only comes from believing without seeing, from continuing without confirmation, from holding a vision that no external evidence yet supports. And that strength, that particular, deep, unshakable kind, is not incidental to your assignment. It is the requirement for it. Because what is coming for you cannot be carried by a confidence that depends on things going well. What is coming for you will require you to maintain your footing in conditions that would destabilize anyone whose foundation was built in easier terrain. Heaven knew this, and heaven used the years you were waiting to build in you the only kind of foundation that could hold what is coming. The delay was not punishment. The delay was engineering. There is something that happens to a chosen one in the hidden season that cannot be manufactured any other way. Character, not the presented version, not the curated, public-facing version that people perform when they know they are being observed. The actual, private, tested in the dark version of who you are when no one is watching, when nothing is being confirmed, when the waiting has gone long enough that no one would blame you for stopping. Who are you in that moment? You know the answer. You've been that person. You've been in that room, in that season, in that stretch of time where the only reason to continue was the thing living inside you that refused to accept that the story was over. And you continued, not perfectly, not without doubt or grief or the particular exhaustion that comes from sustaining belief through a long, quiet season, but you continued. That continuation, that private act of daily faithfulness to a calling that was not yet visible, built something in your character that cannot be taught, cannot be performed, cannot be imported from any external source. It can only be grown slowly through exactly the kind of season you have been living. And the version of you that emerges from this season, the you who arrives at the door of your breakthrough carrying everything the hidden years produced, that version is going to be able to handle what is coming in ways that the earlier version of you simply could not have managed. Heaven was not keeping the success from you. Heaven was keeping the success safe until you were ready to steward it without losing yourself inside it. Let's talk about what is true about your life right now, in this exact moment. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not the exception to a rule that works for everyone else. You are in the final stages of a preparation that most people will never be asked to complete, because most people are not being prepared for what you are being prepared for. The gap between where you are and where your life is going has been closing in ways your current vantage point cannot fully reveal to you. The things that are moving toward you, the connections, the openings, the alignments of timing and circumstance and readiness that will constitute the arrival of your season, they are not distant. They are not theoretical. They are in motion. They have been in motion for longer than you know. You sense this before anyone told you. That inexplicable sense, the one that coexists with all the doubt and all the exhaustion and all the comparing, that sense that something is coming, that the season is shifting, that you are closer than the waiting suggests, that sense is not wishful thinking. That sense is perception. It is the most spiritually attuned part of you registering what the visible dimension of your life has not yet confirmed. Trust it, not because certainty feels better than doubt, though it does. Trust it because it has been the most consistently accurate thing about you your entire life. Every time you have trusted that internal knowing over the noise of external evidence, it has led you correctly. Every time you have overridden it with fear or logic, or the opinions of people who didn't have access to what you were sensing. You've paid a cost. The knowing is not failing you now. Here is what your late arrival is going to mean for the people it reaches. When your season comes, and it is coming, it will carry a texture and a depth and a credibility that early success cannot produce. Because you will not arrive as someone who found a quick path to a comfortable destination. You will arrive as someone who traveled the long road without a guarantee, who maintained the vision through the invisible season, who emerged from years of preparation not bitter or broken, but refined and rooted and ready. The people your life is meant to touch, the ones who are waiting for what you carry, who haven't yet received it from anyone else because no one else went through what it took to carry it. They will recognize something in you that they will not be able to name but will not be able to dismiss. They will recognize the weight of a journey. They will recognize someone who knows what it costs to believe when nothing confirms the belief. They will recognize someone whose message is not theoretical, not borrowed, not constructed from second-hand experience, but earned, lived, grown from the soil of everything the hidden season produced. Your story is the message, and your story required every year it took to write. Most people will never experience what you are going to experience, not because the experience is rare in the sense of being limited, but because it is rare in the sense of being earned. It can only come through a specific road, and most people will not stay on that road long enough to arrive. You have stayed.
Your season is changing, not in the distant, undefined future, but it is the season that is already arriving. The ground beneath you, which has felt uncertain and transitional for longer than you can easily hold, is forming into something. The invisible work to the hidden years is crossing the threshold into visibility. The foundation that has been going down for so long is about to become the base that something rises from. Your preparation was not wasted. There is not a single day of it, not the hardest day, not the most discouraging day, not the day you almost revised your expectation permanently. That was not working towards something. Every day was investment. Every season was construction. Every moment of holding the vision of when nothing confirmed. It was an act of spiritual faithfulness that heaven registered and is in the process of honoring. Your uniqueness was intentional. The way you are weird, the depth of your preparation, the intensity of your feeling, the scale of the calling you carry. None of this was accidental. None of this is excessive. None of this is the thing about you that needs to be corrected so you can fight more comfortably into a world built for smaller assignment. This is your design. This is your equipment. This is the specific combination of qualities that makes you the right vessel for what heaven has been building you towards, and your story is still unfolding. What you are in the middle of right now is not the ending, it is the turning point, the moment in the narrative where everything that has been building beneath the surface finally irreversible wings to rise. Your arrival was never going to be a quiet thing. It was never going to be ordinary or predictable or easily comparable to the early arrivals around you. It was always going to arrive in a way that made the timeline make sense, that made every year of preparation reveal itself suddenly and clearly, and exactly what it was: not delay, not failure, not heaven's oversight, destiny moving at the only pace that your destination required.